Okay, I think we'll get started. So we're doing case studies. Today we'll also do a case study, and this is going to be HLD case study itself. So we are going to do a case study on designing a notification system. Okay. Yeah. So let's get started. And because we've done this a couple of times before, I would want you guys to prompt me out, like what is going to be the steps and stuff like that, so that we can basically, like, at least we have some idea of how to approach this, right? Suppose I'm an interviewer and I'm starting off with a question like, I want you to design a notification system. So what would be your approach? So what is the first thing which you are going to talk about? Anybody? I think people can take turn and can speak out. And I think it's completely fine to suggest multiple things on the same thing. So what would be the first approach? Like, what would be the first step which you take?
First step, maybe we need to drill down the requirements, what exactly we need to build in this, like the functional requirements.
Okay, that's right. So on the requirements bit, what is the requirements which you're going to have? Like, can you name a few of the requirements which you require in this case?
Like design a notification system. So this is like kind of a very vague statement, or you can say a very high level statement. So we need to first drill down what kind of notification we are talking about. Is it email,
Okay.
SMS, push notification,
So
those kind of things?
Yeah. So basically, we're going to like what type or what are different types of notifications. Let me just say types of notification. Right. So this is the first question which we'll ask. So in this case, I would say probably we'll do this like push notifications. The second would be SMS. Third would be email. So we're going to cover all of these out, right? Yeah.
Okay.
So next bit.
Then is it like a standalone service which will be using as a software service kind of thing, or is it like something which has to be already integrated into some existing system?
Yeah.
That would define like few of the criteria.
Yeah. So let's not consider this as a SaaS thing where a company is going to build this. I mean, a company who's going to provide this services to other. We'll probably think of this as like almost all of the companies nowadays would have to send some type of notifications, right? Every now and then. So we'll think of this as like there's a team who's building out this notification service, and all the other services or teams who want to send out notifications will use this as such, right? So I would say
Okay.
that's the requirement.
Then like what kind of content we are talking about? Maybe that would also affect the design. Is it
Okay.
just text content, or does it have some other like things as well?
Yeah. So in this case, I would say it will differ on a type of notification which you're sending out. For example, SMS and push notifications, more or less, you would not have images. Like more or less, I have seen some push notifications with images, if I remember. But yeah, more or less, people don't choose like to send out images and other stuff. Email, yes, probably will need this, right? So I would just say, depending on the type of notification which you send, it might have. It will mostly be text based, but it might have images also. Okay. Next. Anybody? No more questions?
Maybe then I mean, if the requirements are fixed, then the other assumptions and those things, maybe before going to non-functional, the assumptions and limitations which we want to put.
Okay. So any other information do you need to solve this problem? Like, yeah. Go ahead.
I did like when would this what is the triggering point for this notification system? When would we send the notification?
Yeah. So I would say in this case, it's going to be mostly on the server side, right? So there might be other services or other microservices which would need to send in some notifications at a certain point of time. and they would basically call this service or the system to basically send in notifications. Right. So I would say it's mostly server side thing. It's not directly from a client. So it's not somebody who can just directly call from a client side. You basically be doing server to server call for sending out notifications. Okay. Yeah. So I think we can say this server initiated. Okay. The next thing would be for push notifications, right? Or I mean, in general, also we can think of this like what are different clients which would be using this, right? So the clients, or I would say supported devices, because in push notifications it gets important, right? Probably for SMS and email you don't care, but for push notifications you do have to, right? So I would say for in this case, what we can say is screen issues. Anyways, yeah. So the supported devices, we can say that there are multiple type of devices which you can support, right? So you can think of this as what are the, I would say, iOS apps or iOS based devices, Android. I would say probably desktop apps also. And yeah, so I think these would be the ones. And then there are other things also. By the way, I missed one thing. There is another type of notifications which gets sent today. It's kind of a push notification, but it's browser based. So on your browser, you can like basically you can enable notifications also, right? So for the sake of this decision, we'll probably keep it out. These are the common ones people use, so we'll keep only this for the time being. Okay. The next thing would be, if you think about this, a lot of times companies do allow like people to choose their own, like they can basically choose to opt in or opt out of any of these notifications, right? So I would say just one thing which you can have, like, you can basically ask the interviewer if you want to solve this or not, but this can be something like, say, the user can opt out. Right. So basically, they don't receive any notifications, right? And then the other thing would be
Bulk, like do we need to support bulk or just a single notification? Like in case of SMS email, like bulk
yeah.
notification is a also a separate thing.
Yeah. So I think that's also a good thing. So we can say.
And
But
in case of SMS, maybe location will also matter, right? I mean, if we are sending it to mobile numbers, so location which we need to support.
yeah, yeah. So I would say most probably you would have to collect some information about the user. Probably like in some way you have to collect some information which would help you to basically send out those notifications, right? For example, if you're sending out an email, you will need the email address, right? For SMS, you will need the phone numbers. For push notifications, you would need something called as device tokens, right? So I think that would be the case, right? So I would say, yeah, that is a requirement, but that mostly depends on the phone number itself, right? So if your phone number is of 91 plus 91, which basically means of India, and if it's plus one, it's basically US and stuff like that. So I think that would cover the bit. Okay? So bulk notification, and then I would say last thing which we can talk about is multi-device support, which basically means that a user, like for example, I have multiple devices, right? I have a tab, I have a laptop, or like I have a tab, I have a phone, and people have multiple phones also, right? So if you signed in from this like multiple devices, this notification, right? So, probably SMS, it's still fine because one phone number would be linked to one device in this case, or one phone number would be only inserted in one SIM would only be inserted in one device. That's going to be fine. Email is fine because email clients would handle it. If you sign in from multiple places, the email client would take care of it. You don't need to worry about this. But for push notifications, you probably might have to take care of it, right? So you would need like some details of the push notification, but right, all the device information. So we have to be a bit careful about this. Okay. Any more functional requirements? Anything?
And rate limiting, I guess, if that's
Yeah.
needed as a functionality.
Functionality, I would say like let's keep it as non-functional requirements.
Okay.
Yeah, but yeah, right. We'll probably need some kind of rate limit. Okay, so if nothing else, then probably we can move into the next section, which is non-functional requirements. I'll just say NFR. Okay, so yeah, so first somebody prompted out rate limiting. Right. Next.
What is this rate limiting?
Yeah, so when sending out notifications, you would want to like limit out what is the number of notifications which is getting sent at any point of time, right? Okay. In general, rate limiting basically means that suppose I am doing some operation. So I'm basically doing some operation like suppose I'm like, okay, let me take a better example. So everybody have used UPI, right? UPI has this limitation of sending like I think 1 lakh rupees per day, right? So you cannot do transactions more than that from one UPI account or one bank account, basically, right? So we are rate limiting in that sense, saying that the amount is rate limited, that in 24 hours you can only do 1 lakh rupees of transfer. That's it. So you're limiting it in some form, right? So like similar situations can happen in different cases. So in this case, you're the limiting, I would say, property was amount. There are other cases when the limiting property would be different. For example, if I'm doing some operation, so suppose I'm trying to call an API, and this API is basically hitting some backend, some cache, and getting some data out, right? What you would want to do ideally is want to limit that this particular user or this particular user can call this API this many times in particular interval of time, right? So probably something like in 1 second they can only make 2 API calls, or in 5 minutes they can only make 10 API calls and stuff like that, right? And you can do it at different levels. You might do it at the user level itself, saying that this user is only allowed to call 10 API calls, irrespective of what the API endpoints are. Or you can get more restrictive, and you can have like only this particular call can only be made like this many times in particular interval of time, right? So rate limiting is basically that.
So in this context, means what is rate limit? Means what we are saying that what will be limited here?
Yeah. So in this case, what we're saying is like you can think of this as you don't want to send out too many notifications to a particular user, right? Because that's like bombarding and stuff like that. Sometimes things go wrong and would have those kinds of issues, right? So you would probably have like in this case, rate limiting basically means that you would rate limit saying that this particular user would only get this many SMS in any particular time, right?
Okay.
Hmm.
Okay.
I mean, there are multiple scenarios in which why would you want to do this and why not would you want to do this, right? But one situation I can clearly say is like these marketing and these like I would say ads kinds of things, right? Where you promotions kind of notifications which get sent out. You basically want to rate limit it on certain like parameters, saying that not like I don't want to receive 10 SMS saying that you have a loan offer, you have a loan offer, you have a loan offer, right? And you would, I mean, even if you want to send those things out, you would probably want to spread it over out some certain interval of time and then so rate limiting, I would say, would act in.
So this should be handled at server side, rate limiting.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So coming to the next bit, so rate limiting is one of those. The second thing would be like if you look at the nature of this notifications, right? It's mostly I would say something like a real time. So we call it as near real time, which means that like we would want to deliver as fast as possible or without any delays as like possible. Yeah, but yeah, there are multiple approaches which people will take on top of this, right? So think of this as like if the notification is being sent out as a OTP notification, right? For example, somebody is trying to do a transaction or credit card transaction and you're trying to do, you get an OTP and stuff like that. In those cases, you would probably want to stick to real time. I would say not even near real time and real time. So I would say it differs a bit, but for the sake of this decision, we'll probably keep it as near real time. The other thing would be some form of analytics, which would be basically like if you have links and other stuff generated in your particular like the notification which you have sent out like if you can collect some data around how many times it has been clicked and stuff like that. So that would be some like clicks and something. And then things like deliveries, like how many, if your notification was delivered and like deliveries and like notification deliveries and stuff like that, right? So, and clicks, I would say, deliveries and clicks. Right. So this might be a requirement. The other would be standard ones, which would be high availability. And you would probably want to deliver in terms of deliveries of this like messages, you'll probably want to say like at least once. Okay, by the way, before like there are three when you're trying to deal with messages, there are three approaches which you can like take. Like there's something called as, and I'm deviating a bit, but I think this is something important, which is at most once, which basically means 0 or 1, right? At least once, which means I would say 1 plus, right? So 1 or more units. And this is exact ones, right? Like the most common thing which people will do is build out at least once, right? Because this tells you that at least like some form of like your message has been sent. Probably it might have been sent multiple times, but that's okay because things the systems which you're using are not very reliable, right? So it's gonna be very difficult to do something like exact ones. So the problem with exact ones is how do you determine whether your notification has been or whether something has actually happened, right? You would wait for an acknowledgement back. And what happens if the acknowledgement, that particular thing was delivered, but the acknowledgement got lost somewhere in between, right? So those kinds of stuff would always happen. So at least exact ones is a very difficult scenario to have, like, right? At least once is one of the safest scenarios, I would say. But in this case, you will probably have to build out something called as idempotency on the sites which you're handling it, saying that if you get the same task or same message or something like this more than once, you should probably be able to have a knowledge about this, that okay, I've already dealt with this particular thing, so I'm gonna just drop this out and not do anything, right? So idempotency basically means that, right? So if multiple operations are happening on the same, or multiple same operations, you get requests for multiple same operations, you do it only once, and if it like you again get it, you basically drop it saying that okay, I've already done this, right? So that's a scenario. At most ones is basically like if there are stuff where you don't care about too much, so you fire and forget kind of a thing, then it would be like a at most one strategy itself, right? So is this are these three strategies clear? So okay, again repeating, at most ones is basically 0 and 1. Like it might, I mean, you fire and forget, so you don't know whether you like it got delivered on the other side or not, right? So it might be like 0, or it might never have happened for the other side, or it might have happened, right? At least one says you send out something, if you get an acknowledgement back, we probably will not try to trigger it, but if you don't get an acknowledgement, you will trigger it thing, right? So it might happen that you deliver multiple times the same message or same thing which you have done. Exact ones is very hard to configure. I would say it's nearly impossible to have exact ones. There are people who claim to have like exact ones kind of a like setup, but I don't really see like how they do it, and like I don't agree to all those claims. I would say like you can read about this, and people have a lot of different strategies around this, right? So exact ones it's almost like not possible at most cases, right? At least in distributed systems and this whole setup. Right? Okay, so is this clear? Okay, so now moving on, now we'll do some kind of calculations, right? So anybody who wants to prompt out what calculations we need to do?
The number of like notifications we are expecting to be sent out, maybe distributed among each type, and
Okay.
yeah, and that's the major calculation, first calculation.
Yeah, exactly. So I would say let's take some numbers. Push notifications, I would say 10 million. Okay. The other one would be SMS. We would say 1 million. And this is per day. So like I'm saying per day on this, 1 million per day. Emails, I would say 5 million per day. Right. So if you calculate the total would be something around 16 million per day. Hey, is it okay? Now we'll do some. Okay, what's next? What will be the next calculation? Anybody?
These notifications before sending, you might have to store somewhere, or if in that case you will need storage. Otherwise, we can go ahead for bandwidth.
Okay. Yeah. So in general, if you look at this things which are like notification kind of a thing, you want to store some metadata, but you don't want to store all the metadata, I would say, right? So in this case, most of the time you would think of this as like how long would you store this messages and stuff like that, right? So in general, people would use something like a message queue to like have all of these messages. So what is the storage space which you need in the message queue would be the important bit itself, right? So what we can do is like let's do some assumption, right? So for storage, what we're trying to do is we are trying to assume that it would like one notification, and this is on average, right? So takes around like 500 kbs, right? One notification. Now, if you think of this, like 16 million notifications per day would basically mean like if you 16 million into 500 kb, which comes up to close to like 80 GB per day, right? 16.5, yeah, 80 GB per day, right? So 80 GB is what the space you would need in one day. And because you would not want to process this forever in this case, yeah, you don't want to process this forever. I would say probably you would want to do something like it's a week of like you want to retain these notifications for a week, right? So for 7 days or 7 days or week, what we would need would be 80 into 7, which is equal to 560 GBs basically, right, per week, right? So I mean, if you want to just approximate it off, you can just say that we would need a cluster which would have like 512 GB of space, or message queue. Later we'll come to message queue, but like most probably we are going to use something like this, right? So this is what the storage you need. Or if you want to switch to a higher level, probably you can go to 1024 GBs for the message queue itself. Or again, you can choose to like distribute it into smaller systems and then, but that is the stage we need. The throughput in terms of request per seconds we would do is 16 million, right? So 16 million per day divided by 24 hours. So 24 hours into 3600 basically seconds. So it would basically come around something close to, again, the same thing which we did. Like, so I think it's close to 185, but you can just say 200 like notifications per second. Like, so always be careful that while doing all of these calculations, you need not be very accurate. If you stick to the order and stuff like that, it's gonna be fine. So don't ever worry about it. Like, we can again do like the bandwidth calculation, but I'm leaving the bandwidth calculation out for time being. I think it will anyways be like the same thing. Like, if we have the whole thing figured out, we'll probably understand. Okay, now there's some information which is needed to understand about what like how does this notifications work, right? Anybody has any idea about push notifications? Or how do you send out this push notifications? How does it work? Any idea? Anybody? No. Anyways, so let me just switch to the other. Probably you will have something which will tell you. Okay, let me draw it out first and then. Okay, so generally what happens is, suppose I'm talking about Irish push notifications. So there would be a provider, provider, they basically call like, so each of these companies, right, Apple and Google, have their own notification systems built out. So these providers are the ones which basically you and me can buy subscriptions and things like that from these providers. And then there's some system in the middle which is called as Apple Push Notification Service, APNS. Right. So these providers, basically you connect to these providers and these providers connect to APNS, and then this notification gets sent out to like a iOS device. Right. The same thing will happen for an Android device. You would have like a provider. In this case, I think this is called as a FCM, Firebase, Firebase Cloud Management or something. Yeah, cloud messaging, Firebase cloud messaging, and then it gets sent out to a Android device. Okay. For SMS, you would have something like a provider. Again, a provider which basically sends out SMS to the, I would say in this case the network service provider, and then you get a message. But anyways, you can think of this like it's getting sent to a provider, and the provider will forward that message to your device. So yeah, this is your phone. Basically, let's not worry about what's happening. And these providers might be something like Twilio, Nexmo. There are a lot of these, right? So these are the most common ones. And then we have emails. For emails, again, you'll have similar kind of setup. Something like a provider. You can basically, for email, you can set up your own SMTP server and stuff like that. I mean, email service server, but like generally people don't do that because there are other things which also come into the picture. So the provider will call an email service, and the email service will basically send out an email to you. Right? So this is the setup. The provider in this case would be something like SendGrid. I think AWS has something called as Simple Email Service. I think SES. And then I think there are MailChimp is one of them. Right, so this is how it's going to work. Some companies do set up their own, but yeah, I mean, you can choose to set up your own, or you may choose to. Okay. Any questions on this side? Like, and this providers might vary, right? So depending on whom you're working with, you can have you can choose to have multiple providers, or you can choose to have one provider itself, right? In most cases, when people are working at a large scale, they would probably want to have multiple providers so that if one goes down, the system does not get impacted too much. Okay. Any questions on this part? Any questions?
For Android, what you have mentioned?
It's called as FCM. It's called as Firebase Cloud Messaging. Let me
for iOS.
One second. Firebase Cloud Messaging. For I think it's called as Apple Push Notification Service. Apple Push Notification. So this is.
And who are the providers here?
I've not checked in, but you will find like multiple vendors itself, right? So these are kind of vendors itself. So I think Apple and Google also have their own, where you can basically use them directly. But like there are multiple providers also. So you will find. So I think different companies have different setups, or different regions have different setups, right? So in most cases, people would use Firebase for sending out messages on Android devices. For Apple, I think they also have something similar. But in some countries, like I've seen in China and stuff like that, they would not allow FCM there. So they have their own companies, or like there are companies who are basically like Chinese companies which they allow to basically send out, right? So in most cases, it's for Android, I know it's Firebase. For Apple, I think they also have their own. I don't remember the name exactly, but you can also choose the non-company vendors like from Apple and Google also. So there are multiple vendors itself. Okay. Okay. So now coming to like, so we do understand about what would be the.
Ajit, one question here in email, the provider and email service would be different. Like one will be the provider and he would use some email service, or he will only provide the email service.
So they basically do that, right? So basically, you basically call a provider, and the provider has some email service built out or SMTP server built out, which will basically go ahead and send out these systems, emails and stuff like that. So you can think of this as you basically call the provider itself, and that takes care of basically sending out the mail itself. But there's an email service sitting in the middle if you want to know about like how it's done, right? So you will call a provider using something like a REST API or something like this, and they would basically have some email service configured at their end, and then this gets sent out as an email.
Okay.
Yeah, the same is true for all of this, right? So basically, we're abstracting out. What we're saying is, you basically you can think of this as in this form, right? So if I had to draw this, this is this. Right. So you do all of this, and these are basically like a third-party thing. So what you do here is you call it from your service. You call all of this based on what kind of notification you're trying to send, and this takes care of like sending those like notifications ahead. Okay.
So from our application, we will call direct APNS, or we will call the provider which is integrated.
Yeah. So
with
basically,
APNS?
we're using a provider to basically call off all of this, right? So
Okay.
there's a provider, and like so we can think of this as like these are third-party providers basically, not like directly ones, but like third-party providers you're gonna call, and those are gonna take care of sending out the particular type of notification. Yeah. Okay. So I think email and like we will be clear about, right? In email you would have like in email you do send out like different types of emails. You can have normal text-based email, and you can have like images and other stuff kind of a thing, right? So there are like, but it's basically you can send it out as the HTML, right? So in an email you can have HTML tags and do all of those things also, right? But we need to understand this, like this iOS or Android push notifications, right? Like how do they look like? So in order to send out this push notifications, there's something which you need basically, because it's gonna get sent to a device and not like a user or something, right? So it basically is mapped to a device, right? A notification which is going to send out is mapped to a device itself, right? So you need something called as device token. And when you're firing this like message, if you send out when calling your provider, you'll pass this device token saying that, okay, I want to send out this message to this device token or something like this, right? So if a user has multiple devices, and be it Android or iOS or a mix of both of these, you'll probably call all of these services. Like if you're sending out for Android, you'll probably call the Android provider or Android push notification provider, and you'll pass in the device tokens. So if there are multiple devices of that particular user, then you'll have to send out like multiple device tokens itself, right? So you can think of this as a device is linked to one, like a device token is linked to one device itself, right? So it's one-to-one. So there would be something like which will store when talking about a device itself, right? So you can store something like a device ID, right? You can have a device token, and then you can have things like created at when this device when this device was registered, or registered at, I would say, it probably is the better word. And then you would have something like a user ID. So you basically want to know about which user this particular device belongs to, right? So this is how like if you would have some kind of table on your side which will have these kinds of details, right? And like let me just write like user also so that we can see. So there would be another table which is user, which will have things like user ID. I'm going to leave out the username, things like that. Like, just for the sake of simplicity, I'm not going to talk about this. User ID, and then you will probably have something like, so different SMS would, like if you want to send out emails, you would want to have emails. You would have to want to capture phone numbers, but you will divide it into two parts. So you will have the country code and the phone number. And yeah, I'm assuming this is one person will have only one phone number, but that assumption might change depending on what your use case is. And yeah, so anything else? Yeah, I think that should be fine. And probably you'll have some metadata created at a right. And a user can basically have multiple devices, right? Because they might install multiple apps across devices and stuff like that. So a user to a device would be like one to many, right? So this is one, this is n. Okay, is this clear? Okay, so now moving on, like while sending out notifications, you would need this device token, right? So if you look at a payload for a push notification, it might look like a different, like it might look a bit different, but mostly you would have some kind of things like there are different forms of push notifications which is sent on the other side, right? There are some alerts, there are some banners and stuff like that. Not going too deep into this because that needs a very specific domain knowledge itself. But you can think of this that while sending out a notification, it would look like something like this. So you can have an alert which will have something like a title. So it might be something which appears on something on the top itself. You would have something like a body. So the body would have the details of this. Sometimes there's some action which is required. So if you tap on that particular notification, where does it take you and stuff like that. So there might be something like an action, location key and stuff like that. But yeah, those are specific to like how those notifications actually work. I'm gonna leave those things out for timing. But yeah, I mean there are other stuff which you'll also need. But I think this is how your payload would look like to like the service provider for sending out any push notifications. Similar to this, it would be for Android also. Like Android and iOS, it would be much similar. They might have different terms for defining the actionable or the page where you want the land. When the user taps in, where does the user land and stuff like that. But like more or less, this is how it's gonna look. Okay. Any questions till now?
What is this alert in that message body? Alert and action.
Yeah, it's just a namespace. So you can think of this as like there are different types of like notifications that get sent out, right? So when you're saying alert, it's basically coming up as an alert on like something. So there are things like banners. I know there's something called as alert, which basically prompts you on the middle of this, right? And the behavior of these varies. So if you are on the app and then you get a notification, how does it open up? Versus if you are on lock screen, how does it open up and other stuff like that, right? So you can think of this alert as one form of notification or one form of handling of a notification. Okay.
And the last one?
Yeah, so action location key. So like if you are in a locked state and you're basically your device is locked and stuff like that. If now you click on this particular notifications, it might take you to a certain page itself, right? So certain page on the app and stuff like that. So a lot of times it is defined by using the action location key, which might be like a section on the app or a particular page or something like this on the app itself, right? So that's what it represents. Yeah, so I mean, these are minor details which probably you might leave out. I mean, I don't, unless you have worked on notification services, probably I don't think so anybody should be worried about these details in an interview itself. Okay. Any other questions on this one? Okay. So what is the next step? What do we do next?
high level design of overall system.
High level design, or
I
do
mean
you
the
APIs? High level design. I'm just asking. I mean, yeah. So I think
Yes, you can do.
yeah, I think we'll do one thing. It's like probably a better time for doing a high level design set, right? So as we have sorted out a lot of things, we can probably go ahead and like propose like the first solution or propose a solution itself, right? So okay, so there are multiple pieces which we need to solve, right? One is to basically collect this particular details, right? These details which we need to collect, the user ID and the device information and stuff like that, right? So I would say collect user info is one thing which we need to do. The second thing would be basically to sending notifications, I would say. These are two use cases which we have, right? Collect user info, it's going to be very, I would say it's simpler. If you want to draw out something, you can draw something like this. So there are going to be multiple users. So these are clients or users in this case. They would basically, just for the sake of it, I'll have a load balancer. Then there are something as API servers. So I'll call showing this as servers. I'll say API servers for time being. And then these are connected to a DB. Right? And what happens is whenever somebody installs an app or sign up, sign up or installs, right? Like, or logs in into a new device and things like that, right? What you do is you capture the details and basically call this API to get more details, right? So we can talk about the API at this point of time. If you want to like detail it out, it would look something like users. Like, what would be the right API for doing anything like this? Like, what would be the endpoint? I would say something like a user/signup, right? And this is a post call, and we can take stuff like these as an input, right? So we have our email, we have country code. So rather we should say phone country code, but that's fine. The phone number. What else do we need? We can have things like device token and stuff like that, right? So this device token, whenever the app gets installed, you have certain things which you do. So on the backend, you will call the service provider or the APNS API, like you'll call these APIs, you will get a new token or you'll get a token around this, right? So this token basically represents saying that this device, this app, it will have some kind of identity in this form, right? So you get this, and then because this is used for sending out notifications, right? So you will use this information to like populate something like this. Yeah, these two informations, right? So you can do this. The only thing which you need to be like careful about is the same user might come in and install it from different apps. So you need to handle all those scenarios also. Right? It might be a sign up to a new device rather than a sign up or a sign up to a new account and stuff like that. So we'll handle this. You can send it to other information also, like the device name, like is it on iOS or is it Android and stuff like that. So you can have like a device type and other stuff also here. So you can send out those information. Yeah, somebody will say something.
Who will generate this device token as it?
Sorry?
Who is going to generate the device token?
Okay. In general, what happens is while you are using this, what people generally do is on the app itself, the app has a way to connect to these services like FCM and APNS, right? They basically like they actually need to connect to get all of these notifications and stuff like that. So what people do is while somebody is signing up and other stuff like this, they would plug in this particular. So there's a SDK around this where you can have specific calls. So you're saying that okay, at this point of time, I need to get the device token for this particular device. What happens is when you make a call from the app itself, the app will call the APNS and FCM, and you will get back a device token itself from there. So that call is basically made from the app itself, right? Because it will have all the details like whatever they need, right? Like Android device, Android version, and all those stuff, and like which company your phone is, and IMEI number, and like I'm not IMEI number, but they have like device ID and other stuff itself, right? So like while generating this, it just gets generated on the app itself, and because the way these apps, these notifications are delivered is you have a connection from your device to this particular service itself, right? For example, if I'm using an Apple phone, I would have like one connection from my phone to the notification provider, right? In this case, it would be Apple. And any moment I get a notification, they would be able to route it to my device itself, right? Because I have the open connection and stuff like that. Right? So anytime your device would be connected to those things, and they would send out like multiple notifications, right? So on their side, I mean, a bit retracting here from the discussion, but on their side, they can do all of those things, right? Because they know, okay, this is the device, and these are the apps installed. Okay, this notification needs to be sent to this particular device on this particular app. So they can do all of those stuff from their side, right? So this is a registration process which happens, and they're able to basically identify the device as well as the like location which it's sent to. In this case, the location would be the app itself. Okay, I would just say like understand this that the device token is generated by these service providers or notification service providers, or I would say rather in this case, you can think of this as the like if you're connecting to Apple, like if you have an iOS device, you basically connect to the Apple notification APNS service to get your all your notifications. So they would be the one who will provide this, and you can use this token to call your provider, and the provider would be able to forward this to the APNS, and you will get all those notifications and stuff like that. Right? So that's the case. In case of Android, it would be SC. Okay. Yeah. Any questions?
Can you go up to the high-level diagram?
Sorry?
Can you go a bit up to the high-level diagram?
Yeah.
Confusion like from client, what we are setting that's okay. This is the sign-up flow.
Yeah, so in this case, we're not showing up like how they get the device ID and stuff like that. This is just a sign-up flow in which the client would basically call like our servers, and basically we'll pass in like something like this would be the endpoint which will call, and it will send in all of this these all informations, and then we'll be able to store this information.
So Ajit, then suppose in interview, like should we design the high-level diagram for notifications, also sending notifications to user side in the same diagram, or should we create separate diagrams?
I think I would say like it depends on how do you want to show it out. It's probably okay if you want to do it in multiple ways also. Like it depends. Like if you feel that you would have a hard time representing all of this in one particular diagram, then probably you can have multiple diagrams also. Because I think this was a very simple flow itself, right? So we would have kept this out like in a different thing altogether, right? Or if you think about this, right, when you're doing writes and reads follows different paths, and like they're very different kind of operations itself, right? So in that case, probably you might think of this like let's have two different diagrams altogether and then represent it out, right? So that's also fine, I would say. Or probably you can think of this as initially, probably you would want to make multiple of this. And then if you want, at the end, we want to combine all of this and show them, it's also fine. But I say like, it depends on how do you want to take this. I think it's probably preferable if you can keep it clean. If you're trying to keep it clean, it's probably fine if you have multiple. Okay. Especially in those cases where the reads and writes are really different. In this case also, right? I mean, the notifications is quite a different thing than what a user, like a sign up is. So in that case, you can choose to. But yeah, I think it's your call. Whatever you're comfortable with, you can do that. Okay, so the next would be like the notification sending and receiving flow, or you can think of this. So we will have like multiple microservices or services which are going to call this particular notification service, right? So I could just say S1, S2, S3. would basically call all of this. And this is my intermediate diagram itself. So this is not the final diagram, but I'm just trying to show like how is it going to look like. So this is my notification system. And then we have like on the other side, we would have like something like this, right? So I would say like, this is a, like, I'm trying to leave out the providers in the middle, but you can think of this FCM, SMS service, and this is email service. And then this gets called to a particular iOS mobile. This gets called to Android. This gets called to phone, right? And this gets called to email client, right? So like this is how like the intermediate thing would look like. And then we can go ahead and talk about how we can improve this out. I don't have much space. Can I try this out? Okay, yeah, this is good. Yeah, this is better. In fact, I should have tried this before. Right, so I can do this, right? So now if I try to like, now if you look at this, right? So we already have this, right? Which is okay, but it does not take care of all the like scalability bit and everything, right? So this can be an intermediate thing which you show them, saying that this is how it's going to look like. And now you can start adding different pieces to it, right? So like, what are different pieces which you'll add to this? So I'm going to keep it like I'll try to like make it smaller so that I can fit in multiple pieces. So these are like the different services which are getting called. Let's say S1, S2, S3, S4, and this can be like till SN. Right. Now, what are the next things which you'll do on to the diagram which you already have? We can have like a load balancer in the middle, right? So the notification service, because the notification servers are going to be multiple, we could have something like this, right? So I'm just thinking of all of this connecting to a load balancer. I just call it as a load balancer, right? And then we have certain number of, I would say, notification systems. So I would say, let me just write notification systems, and I would say N1, N2, N3. There might be more of this, and all of this. What happens is they connect to like DB, and they will also connect to a cache. So I would say let's just show a cache and a DB. Right? So we basically connect to a cache, and we can look into how like what kind of strategy would be okay. I think in this case, because we are going to cache out mostly stuff like user information, device information, and stuff like that. Those are like not changeable. Like people don't modify this too much and stuff like that. So I think it's going to be fine. Any caching strategy which you change, there's not a lot of stale data or things like that we need to worry about, right? So just going to put this into one block so that it looks like it's a one cluster. And then what happens on the other side is instead of sending directly, which we did here, right? Like instead of calling directly to this, what this notification system would do is based on the type of notification which you're going to send, we'll probably have different queues around our site, right? So you can straight away think of that there are 4 different types of SMS, like things like iOS notification, push notification, Android push notification, SMS push notification, SMS, and email. So we can probably have 4 different queues, and this would be queue cluster. It's not going to be one queue, but like you can think of this in this form, right? So I would say you can call it as iOS queue. So in this one, say iOS. This would be an Android kind of a thing. The next would be SMS, and then the last would be email. Right now, this again would be like there would be multiple workers who would be working on this, right? So each of this would have multiple workers. We'll just show one for time being, but I mean, you can think of this as a cluster. So this would be a worker, and this would be like a iOS worker, I would say, right? So it's connected to this. The same thing would happen. Like we would have different set of workers on this side, not drawing these things out, right? And these workers will now connect to the providers, right? In this case, so it would like I'm just calling instead of calling it a provider, I'm just calling it APNS. In this case, it would be FCM. In this case, it would be SMS provider. So SMS, and the next would be shit. This case, it would be our email provider itself, right? And then it gets delivered on the other side, so not showing the client side, like running out of space itself, right? So this is how the, like, if you want to show something like this, you probably will show. This is how the rough, I would say, the HLE diagram would look like. In this case, if you want to know how the flow would happen, so on this side, somebody like or a service would call this particular load balancer, so I will call this 1. This gets forward to the particular notification system, so this is 2. And then based on whatever you want to choose, right? So suppose if that notification can have multiple things, right? So now this is also interesting, right? So when you're exposing any contract to the notifications or to the other side, to the service side, what do you want to like? Do you want to expose one at a time, or do you want to expose multiples, right? So what do you mean by that is, can you do things like if you want to send out the same notification in different forms, like if you want to send out a SMS, send out an email, and send out a push notifications, can you just club this into one and you will be able to do it in one or stuff like that, right? In this case, what happens is in the notification service, it basically looks at like tries to do a one-to-many or like multiplexing kind of thing where it tries to get multiple of these SMSs and stuff like that. And like if the particular request has like you need to send it to multiple, I would say it has multiple notifications, right? Then it will do is it will try to create one and put it into the specific queue. So for example, I want to send it to iOS and I want to send it to email. Then in that case, that particular notification gets broken down into 2 parts and like gets sent to the individual queue itself, right? So that you can do, or you can keep it at like granular if you want to, but I'd say like that's a better approach, I would say. When you're sending out multiple, probably send out like one request can have all the details. This would be 3, it will go into the particular queue. This would be 4, it goes into the workers would call the Apns, and the 6th would be like basically sending out to the iOS device itself. So this would look like that. And this, right? So this is how it looks like. Yeah, Chef, go ahead.
Ajit, this S1 to SN, these are actually servers which are trying to send notification,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, exactly. So,
And,
sorry?
yeah. Okay, so
these are servers, and this can be different servers of the particular organization and stuff. Yeah.
And after that, what is the work of this notification system, like this part here, the one which is N1, N2, N3?
Yeah, so the notification system can do multiple things. It basically provides the APIs which the services would use to basically send out this notifications, right? There would be a contract saying that if the services want to send out a notification, they would use that contract to do it, right? So this will basically be an API server kind of a thing. They can do some kind of basic validations so that if you're sending out a notification, it needs to have, like if you're sending out an email, so email ID should be there, SMS, phone number, and entry codes should be there, and stuff like that you can do. It can do the other bits of it where it can fetch information. For example, if you're just sending out, like if your guest is getting out a user ID, it can fetch out based on this user, I need to get the email ID and stuff like that, right? So they can do all of those parts, right? Basically, the validation bit would happen on this side, and the validation bit might be like, depending on how do you want your SMS to, your notifications to be, there might be different kinds of validations, right? So if you are sending some like variables and other stuff itself, then you'll probably, if you have like, we'll come to the next part, which is basically about notification templates, but you will do some kind of validation on this layer. You will do some kind of data fetching from this layer itself, right? So this is like, if you're sending out user ID in your request, so this will fetch out the details for the user and stuff like that. It would do some, like it will use the cache and other stuff to do other side of things. It would basically also use to do the multiplexing bit. So if one notification you wanted to send to different types or different types of notifications in one request itself, it will do all those things. Say, okay, I need to create a iOS object and put it into the queue and stuff like that, right? So it will do the multiplexing bit if it needs to be done. Yeah, and yeah, it can also store some metadata around notifications and other stuff itself, right? Or probably you can do it on the worker side itself. But yeah, this is the responsibility of the notification system itself.
So this is a push system, right? We are pushing the data from the server to the endpoints. So does the server receive any feedback? So out of it, or it just sends and forgets?
Yeah, it can get something like it can get some basic information, right? So you can think of this is you can also do something like if you're firing something, you get a like a student response saying that your notification was accepted, right? Which basically means that the notification system is started like has accepted your request, and now it's trying to process it out. If there's some validation failure, it will give you a response back saying that okay, blah blah blah, we're not able to do this 400, you have a bad request. And then like it can send out something others than this as well, right? It can send out your unique ID saying that if you want to know about like the delivery information, or when was your SMS and things like that been sent out and stuff like that, right? If you want to basically verify whether your particular notification was sent or whatever information you can get, right? It might be that you cannot get all the information, but there are some other information which you can get, right? So those kinds of things, you can send back an ID, and this ID can be used to get all the like status of that particular notification, right? Whether it was sent, when delivered, and other stuff, etc. Right? So I would say like there are multiple uses of this server. This server would require a response back, I would say, just to understand whether your request itself was accepted or not. And then it can also do multiple jobs. So if you want to build out a system which gives you certain information about deliveries and other stuff, then probably you can also have like these kinds of information stored here.
Yeah, Ajit, this information is, I feel it is needed because if we see the diagram there, we have messaging queues, right? So we would be consuming the message, and like how, unless the message is like, depending on the strategy, we are sending the message at least once or more than once. So to know that it has been sent at least once, we should have some feedback. Then only we would remove the message from the queue. Otherwise, it would be there till one successful send is complete, right?
Yeah. So I think there might be multiple ways in which you can do this, right? So you can do something like a notification log and stuff like that. So these workers might have something as a notification log. It might be like a DB itself, right? So and this might have like all of these workers might connect to this, and it might have certain information like a notification log. Okay, so in general, you queues will have like a retries, which is called as a dead letter queues. So there's something DLQ, which is called as dead letter queue, which means that if the worker has picked up something, the queue, like the way the queue works is if you picked up something, like it's gone, right? So if the worker picked up something and starts processing, at certain point of time, it's not able to process it successfully, then what it can do is it can push this message back to a dead letter queue. And then you have other strategies which is working on a dead letter queue. So they would again have some workers which you pick up from the dead letter queue and again retry it and stuff like that, right? Which is basically here, you represent by a retry. I'm not trying to show all the setup here, but that's how it works. But yeah, I mean, you can also have a notification log, right? But because no matter how many times you retry, some things can still fail, right? Because there's something which is like basically wrong or something which is missing and stuff like that, right? So yeah. Yeah, so something like this, I would say, would be used. That depends on how do you do it, right? A lot of times people don't worry too much about notifications in that per se. Like they handle it in different ways. Unless you're working for something like a bank or stuff like that, where notifications are like, you need very like a consistent delivery. I would say like the notification delivery information is very important there, right? In most cases, it's not. Like if you think about this, you did something and you want to just say like, okay, you have done this, a promotional kind of thing. Promotional kind of thing is fire and forget. You don't care about this at all. In other stuff also, if it's just some information which you want the user to know, it's probably fine. If you don't care about it, it gets lost. For something like OTPs and stuff like that, and probably transaction. In fact, in transaction information also, right? I don't get my salary like SMS. I'm like I get all the debit information in this world, but I will never get the credit information. I don't know what kind of whitelisting or blacklisting have they done that I never get like a like salary credited in like SMS ever. I've never got it for like I think past 2.5 years. So, but I always get like debit information. So I don't know. I mean, it depends. I would say like the OTPs are the ones which are really important. And the way these OTPs are handled nowadays, I've seen this in with SJC that if they get to know that you're not like if somehow the SMS provider or whatever your choice of things is not able to deliver your particular notification, then they will call you up immediately because they are able to identify that your SMS was not delivered on the other and stuff like that. Right? But that kind of I would say that kind of consistency or that kind of information probably is not required at all the places, right? So I'd say it's fine. I think you can ask the question and you can take a call on this whether you want to do the delivery information and we want to have like such I would say like such system built out which does a lot of on the delivery side itself, right? So if you're saying that okay, if you're not able to send out SMS, call the person and send out some OTP and other stuff like that. Right? So you can choose to ask all those questions, but most of the times it's not that important, I would say, to go into this. But yeah, if you want to keep certain information, you can have a notification log, which will keep all of the information, right? But in general, what happens is people don't maintain notification information for long, I would say. They might have some metadata around this where they would maintain a few things for a few days, but generally they would have like a expiry time or a time to live. And that's really short. It's 7 days or 30 days or something like this, right? So nobody cares about a notification which is sent before 30 days, right? You don't worry about it too. So that's one of the things. Okay, any more questions on this side? Okay, just so let's talk about different parts of the system. The left side of like we'll go from the left and right, left to right. So the left side is the services S1 to SN, which is basically like the different services. You can think of this as like order microservice or order service cluster. Something might be a fulfillment and like other things, right? They all want to send out some kind of notification. They would basically use a load balancer. So the second part is the load balancer, which is, as you guys know, it's basically whenever you have like something, multiple things, you basically want to load balance the request coming in, so you do that. Then we have the notification system, which would basically again have like multiple of like so like which exposes which has multiple nodes and which exposes APIs. These APIs might be simple like a REST API where you push in a like notification would have information like, for example, if you're sending out email, you would have certain information like to, from, if you like from which account you basically if you want to do some aliasing and other stuff, then you'll have a text body. The body might have like HTML or something like this, right? So you have a type and all those things, right? So those kinds of information. And then this notification service connects to cache and DB. The cache is basically used. So the cache is used to like fetch some information. So you can think of this as just to reduce the load on the DB itself. You can fetch out some information like user information, device information. So you can keep on the cache itself. The same thing, which is like the things which you filled out in the sign up call are getting stored in DB itself, right? So you can choose to cache it out, and then you can choose any strategy which you want, right? So probably somebody who's basically, and you can think of this, right? Somebody who's signed in up now probably would do certain information like would basically sign up or register and other stuff. They would get some information and other things and all of those things, right? So probably caching those kinds of things is important. And you did just need to look into what caching strategies fit works in this case, right? So the next thing would be the queues. So for each of the different types of notifications which are going to send out, we'll have a different queue itself. And then we'll have multiple workers working on this queue. We'll do have like a DL queue, which is deleted queue, in case you pick up some like task or message, you try to process it out or send out a notification. If you find some failure, what you can do is you can put this into deleted queue. And the deleted queue again can have different workers. Probably they would have less number of workers because you're not expecting a lot of like cardinality, a lot of messages in that particular queue. And you again pick up and retry and do all this stuff. These workers can connect to a notification log database. We'll basically put out like, okay, trying to send this messages or something like this, right? Or basically basic information about the notification messages itself. Basically about the logs, right? When you try to send, when it was sent, did you get acknowledgement back and not or other stuff like that? You can do all of it. Now these workers would basically connect to this APNs, this third-party service provider basically, and you can choose to have multiple, like you can choose to have connection pools where you have multiple connections open. And at any point of time when you're sending out like you get a you want to send out you can just pick up one connection from the school and just basically try to do this, right? So it will be pretty fast in that case and stuff like that. Yes, yeah. So that's it. That's how like the HLD diagram would look like it. Any questions on this part? I'll try to look into. Probably we should also talk about how the like a send API would look like. So think of this as in this form: post, email /send. What information would we need here? We would need something like to. Again, this can be a list, right? So we'll assume this to be a list. From, this would be one. Like sorry, no, not a list. From would be one. And this can be like you can choose, like they can be aliasing also, but I'm just like I'm just gonna leave this out for like again that requires an understanding about how does it work. So say to from subject, what is the subject of this particular thing, and then you would have like a content. The content can have, because I think emails have different types, like it can be text or it can be HTML. So it can have things like type, which is basically the content type, and then it can have a value, which can be a body, right? Whatever what you sent into all of this, it can go into something like this. Yeah. So this is how like a standard email send would like a email. If you want to send out a notification on email, this will look like. You can do multiple things on this. If you want to expose a better API, which can basically do like, where you want to send like the same messages, which is going to send out in different forms to different people. If you want to send out those things out, this is how it is going to look like. In this case, this is how it's sent out on the I would say on the other side, right? So this is on the like if I'm sending out an email to an email provider or something like this, right? So this is for the third party. This is not for our side, right? So this is how it looks like on the third party itself. For our side, probably or on the notification system side, probably you don't need all of this information, right? So what you would need is you would need user ID. From you would still need, I would say, because it depends on how you do that. Like not every notification is going to be sent from one particular email address. So from you'll need these other stuff, right? So you probably don't need the two stuff. You get that information from the DBs and then you use it. So that's the thing. So I would say let's try to let's try to just take a small shot at this, right? So how would a notification look like? So I would say I would call this as notifications. I would say like you don't need to call it as a send or something, which is going to be fine. And then in this case, you can do is you can have bunch of these, right? So it can be something like if you want to just send SMS, it would have like a SMS parameter. It would have like or you would say push. In this case, you would have something like this. You'll probably want to generalize this. So you'll generalize in the form that you will not have iOS and Android. Well, in the contract itself, but you'll have something like this. You will have email, right? So this is how it can look like, right? So this can be a contract, and inside this, if you want to elaborate, SMS might look like something like this, right? So in SMS, what do you need? Or you can think of this as instead of doing this, probably if you want to optimize it better, right? You have all of this information, but you also have like a user ID, right? So you're sending it like user ID on the top level itself, right? Because all of this might, and I'm assuming this is for one, this is not for bulk. So bulk might be different, but this is for one. You have a user ID. So now in SMS, if you go, what do you need for SMS? If you inside, you see, probably you need the content, right? So content can be one of the keys. Yeah. Anybody saying something?
Yeah, Ajit, this API is from user to like server to notification system, or is it from?
This is from the servers or different servers which you have calling the notification system itself, right? So then they try to push in some notification.
Okay, so there do we need like this SMS email, or can we say, since we are doing multiplexing at the notification system, probably we could have message only, and we could say notification type as SMS or email, and it would multiplex and read out to the correct queue.
I mean, it depends on how the setup is, right? But you can think of this like the same message might be a bit different, right? The wordings might be different. Like SMS, like you want to compress it out, right? It would be like a smaller message. Like you probably would like you want to fit into some characters, 280 characters. I don't know. I don't remember exactly, but there's some character limit on one SMS, right? For push notifications, also you would want to keep it a bit small inside, right? For email, you probably want to have like a bigger email itself, right? So it depends. The thing is, what you can do, and this is good, is that instead of giving the whole content here, what you can do is you can use templates. So you can say that use this template, and then if you have any variable information, right, the template would be something like this. So I'm just saying SMS template. It's going to look like something like this, right? So hi, and I'm saying user name. You have an offer quantity. I'm just saying probably not the right word, but you have like amount, offer amount would be a better. So offer amount, right? So this might be a template, right? And I could name this template as marketing SMS, right? I name this template as marketing SMS, and this is how my template looks like, right? Now what I can do is in this instance, instead of sending out content, I could do something like this. Yeah, I could say template name or template ID, whatever you want to have. Like you send out this, and then you send out whatever the information which is needed, right? So in this case, username, I can put it if on my side, or if on the notification system time they have the username, then it's completely fine. If they don't, then what they need to do is like basically pass in these values, right? So username would be something which is required on this side, and then another thing what will be required would be the offer amount itself, right? So this is how you pass in the same thing. And again, for the same thing, just give me a moment. I'm just getting. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, so instead of passing all the information, right, what you can just pass is the details, which is like this, right? So you can pass in the template ID and the other variables which you need in that particular template itself, right? So you can do something like this. And this basically means that you will have, like, similarly, you'll have templates for push notifications and emails also, right? Now, what you're doing is, instead of passing the whole content directly, what you're doing is like, okay, use this template and stuff like that. So now what happens is probably this system, right? The notification system might have other APIs where you would allow them to create templates for SMS, email, and other stuff. And the worker, while sending out, while sending out messages, would try to like do the pick out the right notification template and probably want to do this, or like there are two places where you can have a template thing done, right? Resolved. One can be at this level, or one can be at this level. Probably at the worker level, it's still fine because that's the place where you actually need to do this, and it will reduce the load or the work which the notification system is doing, right? The worker can take the responsibility of that, right? So you can do all of those stuff itself, but yeah, the only thing which you need to be careful while suggesting something like you can have like the same content would be sent across several or types of messages. It's not generally true, right? You would basically send out like the same thing when you're talking in terms of SMS. You would like have a small SMS, like you just say a few keywords and stuff like that. Push notification, same. Probably you want to keep it short. In email, probably you want to give more details, right? You would have images and other stuff also. So that's the reason I would say, like, instead of doing that, probably think of this. It's the same thing which you can do, right? So for SMS, we can have like like this kind of thing. For email also, we can do the same thing. And for like push notifications also, we can do the same. Does that make sense?
So the fetching the details can be done at the worker side, or
Yes.
also we can do it at the
notifications. Yeah, so I would say like look at this and take a call on this. I would say like probably doing on the worker side, I would be more comfortable with doing on the worker side itself, right? So if you look at this, the workers have to do certain job, right? They're calling APIs and they're doing other stuff like logging notifications or logging logs against that notifications and stuff like that. So I think it would be fairly like if you want to do this, you can do it at that level. Or you can do something like this, right? The best part would be all of these workers might connect to a cache or might connect to different caches, like depending on the cache, and you store this in the cache itself. So most of the time you will cache it out and you use it from the cache, right? Because notification templates is also something which is not going to change too much. If they change, then probably you'll have to propagate all of those things. But it might be a good use case to use a cache, right? I think notification templates fits perfectly into a use case where you would want to use it.
What are these templates can have is option to customize the field, right? Like
Yeah.
sender name and all. So those may need processing before sending.
Yeah, so that is the validation which will happen at that layer. So the notification system, what does is it gets some information about this and it knows certain things, right? So it can know certain, like instead of like if you want to do some validation, one thing where you can do the validation is if that particular system also can do the like can also talk to the notification DB or the template DB where it has all the information, or you can do something clever, which is like while creating the notification template itself, you store some metadata saying that the keys are required, these keys are required, and these keys and this type are required. So when somebody is sending out you the details, you would basically try to do all of those validation itself, right? So you know this notification template needs XYZ keys. So if you get a request for this particular thing, you can validate, okay, is this XYZ key already there? If it's not, then you will probably fail that validation. I mean, the validation fails and you return 400 saying that, okay, you will not be able to send out this notification. This is the parameter which is. So yeah, you can do multiple of things at multiple places and you can do things cleverly also, right? So if you're saying that at a notification system, you're trying to do validation, do you need the whole template? You can think about this if you can do something clever, which is to keep the metadata, which is basically tell you what are the keys just required, then it becomes fairly simple. Or you can also choose to do it the whole, I would say, like the whole interpolation, right? Where you, in this template, you will try to like interpolate the values and then use it forward. You can also do it in the notification system itself. The only thing which would happen is because you're doing a lot of other stuff there, probably you'll need more instances there, right? You will have to increase the thing. So nothing wrong with on doing it on this side or on that side. So I think that both should be fine. You can take a call on this. I don't see a physical, like there's not a clear trade-off where you would want to do. But yeah, if you want to do it in a notification system itself, you can do this, or you want to do it in a worker system, you can do it in a worker system. But yeah, sorry.
If we have user parameters like customizable, like you are trying to send a template where you are trying to customize that template with hello name, the name of the person to whom you are sending this template or the mail or email using that template. Suppose hello Ajit, you want to create. So that would need some that parameter can be retrieved from DB and notification system as it is connected to DB, and in worker it can just fetch the template from cache and put those values there.
Yeah. So I would say like you would not want to have notification system like fetching a lot of values, right? So I would say if you're using a template and a template requires some variable parameters or there's some variables out there, you probably want the person who's sending you this particular notification request would send you the details. Because if you look at this, right, notification system would be a single responsibility thing, right? Why would be I responsible of the data to fetch from some place?
Just to reduce the data which we are sending, like from the server to the notification system, it would be a REST API call, suppose, and then we are passing user ID. And suppose I need to customize by user first name, then probably I would need to fetch from database that from user ID. Yeah.
Yeah. If it's just the username, probably it's fine. You can do this if that's the case. But look at this, that where it can go, right? Tomorrow you might want other information. Like you fetch me the order ID, the order, like product name ka SKU also. Do you want notification system to do that? No, right? I don't want to connect to multiple systems to fetch out all this data, right? And I will not have this in my DB. So if I have if I have certain information in DB, for example, like an email address or phone number, and like these two are things which will commonly have at the notification system DB itself, right? Then it's completely fine. But if you don't have this, then you probably need to take a call that should my notification system connect to like all the services on the left hand side, because they would have certain data and they would want to do this. And how would you do that, right? You would have to call their APIs, right, to get the data. You cannot, I mean, notification system would not contain details of orders and other stuff. Right? They should not. They should not connect to order DB also. The only way you can fetch this information is by calling APIs and other stuff. But do you want to call APIs?
Ajit, here the DB notification system, what we are storing on that DB?
That's the same thing, right? Like we talked about the user and the device info mostly. And then if you want to have certain things like templates and everything enabled, then probably the templates information.
Okay. Yeah, then I think probably from server side, that information needs to be sent.
Yeah, exactly. So I would say, like, look, probably it might be fine to get some information, probably user level information, and it's more commonly used, like everybody is using name and stuff like that, then you can do certain things around this, but not anything apart from this, right? You would not want your notification system to connect to multiple APIs and other stuff, right? Because that's not the responsibility itself, right? Okay. Yeah, so we have done this. Now, like there might be, if you look into the responsibility of these systems, probably at this level, like coming back to the notification system level, you can do validations, which you talked about. You can store templates. You can get in a request. So basically, request to send in, like create a new template, modify a template, and other stuff. If you want to send out notifications, you can use that to send notifications, basically trigger notifications, I would say. And it also does the multiplexing bit where it looks into the type and pushes that particular type into the particular view, which is there. You can do other stuff also, like if you want to do service to service authentication, SQS authentication, which is saying that these services are only allowed to call this particular thing. You can do it this level itself. You can do SSL and other steps also. Like this particular, like probably SSL is going to be outside, I would say. But like if you want to do some kind of authentication, authentication authorization, you can do this. If you want to do certain things like rate limiting and other stuff, also you can do at this point in time, right? Because you know how many requests have been made and other stuff, right? So you can put in a rate limit and other stuff.
So Ajit, it is a server side event, right? We are trying to send the information from server side. So authentication and authorization is still needed.
Yeah, so in general, what happens is if you look at this, right, even when you're trying to call server to server, people have I've seen this, that they don't want to, like, you would need to have some certain tokens or other stuff. You'd probably use something like a service to service token instead of a user token and other stuff, but you would want like certain authentication and authorization at this level. Nobody wants to keep it open, even if it's in the VPC, in the same VPC, stuff like that. Yeah. Okay, the next thing would be things like analytics. So if in any case, if you want to maintain analytics and stuff like that, you can do it at this worker level. So the worker might connect to an analytics DB, which will store information about like when did you send this, how many SMS have you sent to this particular user and other stuff, because I think the worker would have all of this with you. And then the other side would be that if you do certain actions on the app, or if you do certain actions on a particular notification, it might be configured in such a way that they can also get some information to the analytics service itself, right? So there are two types of information which will have in analytics. One is the send and delivery information, which is like when did you send this notifications, when it got delivered and other stuff. And the other thing which you will have is like if you can track it out, like if somebody opened this particular notification and stuff like that. So you would be able to do certain things on this. Okay, I think that's pretty much about this, I would say. Any questions around this? Any questions?
I did the analytics part. I did not get the analytics part. How would we do that?
Yeah. So if you look at the analytics for a notification system, right? What is the analytics which you require? Something like how many notifications get sent in a particular thing, or how many like type of this notification got sent, right? Like look into, like, think about what are the analytics stats which you would require and which would make sense to you, right? So I would say something like how many sent, which type of sent, when was delivered, and other stuff, right? So you can store all of this information from the worker side, saying that when you try to call the particular third-party service provider, this is the time when you called it for this particular notification, and this is the data which you called back and stuff like that, right? So one bit is that where you store all the information about, like, it's not like a log, it's less information about the, like, it's less information, saying that probably you just store that, okay, you aggregate and store it, right? Saying that, okay, in this hour I've sent like 1,000 iOS notifications or things like that, right? So you don't store the whole information, that is the notification log, but you store some analytics data information which might be aggregated at certain levels, etc. And then yeah.
And the second part, like whether user has seen that notification or not, and clicked on, suppose there is a URL in the notification, he has clicked on that or not. Those kind of notifications.
Yeah, so if you think about this, when you're sending out a notification, if you send out a unique ID itself, right? And then if you have an analytics system built out where if somebody opens up this, it calls a particular endpoint saying that, okay, it sends a particular endpoint saying this particular notification was accessed, right? Just the ID. If you just send, like, you don't send any data and stuff, you just send out some information saying that, okay, this URL was, you just call that URL. If there's on the analytics service or on any other service which is on the site, which is basically handling this information, they can probably basically look at this and say, like, okay, I know this notification was accessed at this point of time, right? So they can store those kinds of information on their site.
I think that trigger to, like, how it will be handled, like when somebody opens that notification, how we would get a feedback that he has opened that notification.
Yeah, so in most cases, the SMS, it's difficult, I would say. You'll not be able to do that. Emails, people have this calls, like you would see that people have, like, they actually put a JavaScript in the emails and stuff like that, which will probably not be visible. And when you open this up, it gets triggered. I've seen people doing this. I've not looked into the details of it, but I think in HTML or in emails, you can have some JavaScript around this, which will give you that information. For SMS, you can't do anything. I don't think so. Unless the service provider gives you something, probably you can't do anything about this, right? You will not get anything. For push notifications, you can do something custom, right? So if you get a notification, if you click on that notification would basically take you to a certain section. Because that app is all in your control. You can just fire an API call from there saying that, okay, this particular notification or this particular ID of the notification just got opened at this particular device. So different would have like a different handle. Okay. Any questions? Any questions apart from this? Anybody? I'm hoping that this is one of the most common questions which people get asked, right? So if it's clear, if it's clear, I hope this is clear enough that next time when somebody asks you about this, you'll be able to answer this, and you'll be able to just also like talk about the trade-offs, right? So that is also something important, right? So whenever you're choosing something, it's the same thing, right? If you look at this, I was saying that you can do it on the notification system side also, the template handling part, and you can do it on the worker side also. And in this case, I don't have a strong opinion about where do you want to do this. I would say, like, you can do it at both the levels itself. Like, that's not going to change how much work you're doing. Until unless you have a strong reason why would you want to do this place or why you want to do it that place, right? So whenever talking about any choice, have some like think about some trade-offs which you need to do, and just think about is there a problem if you do this? Is there a problem not if you do this, and stuff like that, right? So that gives better clarity that if you're suggesting something, there's a backing around this, right? So what did you like? Why did you suggest something versus why did you not suggest something?